I grew up in a village so small it was almost like living in a bubble. Everyone knew everyone. I mean, everyone. There were no secrets, no mysteries, just 80 or so people scattered across a handful of houses, doing their thing day in and day out. It's weird, how comforting that felt at the time. I could wander off as a kid, 5, 6 years old, and no one would bat an eye. My parents didn't worry. Hell, no one worried. Because in a village that small, nothing ever really goes wrong, or so I thought. As a kid, it felt like freedom. I'd race around the fields, run to the creek, even wander into the woods, and no one would say anything. There was this strange sense of safety that came with living there, the kind of safety that only exists when there's nowhere to hide, and everyone's business is someone else's business. That's the thing about small places. When there's so little happening, it almost feels like nothing could happen. And maybe because of that, you stopped thinking about the possibility of something bad sneaking through the cracks. I didn't think twice about walking to the store by myself or hanging out with my friends for hours. Adults didn't seem concerned, kids didn't get lost, and every day was the same as the one before. Predictable. That's the best word to describe it. Life was easy, simple, and safe, so you never expected anything could slip through the cracks. But now I can't help but wonder if that false sense of security, if the fact that nothing ever happened wasn't the warning sign all along. Because in that small village where nothing ever goes wrong, maybe something did, and I just didn't see it coming. I can still picture it, that summer day. The sun was beating down on us, and Max and I were practically parched, craving something cold to drink. I don't know why we didn't just walk back home and ask our parents for a couple of coins, but there was this sense of stubbornness in us. We wanted to do it on our own. There was a little shop in the village, but the prices were so low it barely registered as a transaction. Still, we didn't have enough change to make it work. We were thirsty, desperate even. That's when she called us over. Miss Hilda. I don't know if you've ever met someone like her, but Miss Hilda was, well, different. She lived on the far edge of the village, in one of those houses that was slowly being overtaken by nature. Her garden was a mess of overgrown weeds, and the front porch always seemed to have the same chipped paint that never quite faded, no matter how much time passed. She was always talking about helping the young ones, a phrase that never sat right with me, but there she was, calling us over like she had the solution to our problem. She said she was making tea for everyone in the village for her birthday, or at least that's what she claimed. I don't even know why we went to her. Maybe we were just tired of walking, or maybe the thought of cold soda was enough to make us forget any other questions. Miss Hilda offered us a deal. Go gather some mint for me, and I'll get you as much soda as you want. At the time, it felt like a no-brainer. What kid wouldn't take up that offer? But now, when I think about it, there were too many little things that didn't add up. The way she spoke was off. It was too careful, like she was trying to sound kind but didn't quite manage it. And her eyes? They always seemed to be darting around, never quite looking directly at you. The strange part? I don't think I ever saw her leave the house to go anywhere. Was it just me? I don't know, but now thinking back, something about her offer didn't feel as innocent as it did in the moment. Something felt off, and I should have noticed it then, but I didn't. We didn't. Max and I were on a mission, our heads full of that naive confidence only kids seem to carry with them. We didn't stop to think about the heat, how the sun seemed to be searing the sweat right off our faces. We didn't care. We were going to find mint, because that's what we promised Miss Hilda, and we'd get our soda. Simple. But somewhere along the way, that simple mission turned into something else entirely. Out of nowhere, they just appeared. 2 guys. I remember feeling that strange shift in the air when they came into view, like the world around me suddenly got heavier. They didn't look like they belonged there. It's hard to explain exactly, but there was something about them, something that didn't fit. They were tall, taller than most of the people I knew, but not in a way that was intimidating. More like off. It wasn't just their height, it was the way they moved, the way they held themselves. It felt deliberate, like they were aware of every step they took, watching us as we walked. And I don't know why, but I didn't question it. I should have. There were so many things that didn't sit right. They asked if we were alone, and I remember the moment so clearly. The words came out in this strange, almost too friendly tone, like they were trying too hard to sound casual. There was something about it, about their eyes scanning us like they were sizing us up, but I didn't feel afraid. Not at first. At the time, I guess I chalked it up to being in a small village. New faces weren't that uncommon. Maybe I was just used to it. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I just couldn't see the red flags then. But now I can't stop questioning it. I should have known better, right? Why was I so willing to trust them? What was it that made me so comfortable, when every instinct now tells me something was wrong from the start? As we followed them, I could feel it, that weight in the air, like something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired, or maybe the heat was starting to mess with my head. But the further we went into the forest, the more I realized something wasn't right. The world around us seemed to shrink, everything familiar slipping further away with every step. I could hear the distant sound of the village, but it felt like it was getting quieter, like we were moving into a place where no one could hear us anymore. And then there was Max. He was always the calmer one between us, the one who didn't panic easily. But I could see it, his face pale and tight with fear, his eyes darting around like he was looking for an escape that wasn't there. He kept glancing at me, like he was trying to say something, but the words never came. I don't think he could say it, not out loud, not yet, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew something was wrong. He had already sensed it long before I did. The men didn't help. At first, they were friendly, maybe too friendly. Their smiles were too wide, their words too sweet, like they were trying to make us comfortable. But then something shifted. One of them, the taller one, started getting impatient. His answers were shorter, sharper, like he was annoyed by our questions, and that change in his voice, cold, sudden, sent a shiver down my spine. But I didn't say anything. I should have. I should have asked them why they were leading us so far away, why they were acting this way. Why did it take me so long to realize it? Why didn't I notice the shift in their behavior? It was like they were trying to push us further, not just lead us, and I kept following them, even though every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around. I don't know exactly when it happened, when the moment finally snapped into place for Max, but I'll never forget how he leaned into me, his voice barely a whisper, barely audible over the sounds of the forest. "There's something wrong, we need to run." His words, trembling yet trying to stay steady, made my blood freeze, but I didn't get it right away. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, or maybe it was the heat, or the exhaustion finally catching up with me. I mean, we were just kids. We were used to things being simple, right? I remember looking around, the trees now thicker, the path harder to see, and the village nowhere in sight. I tried to tell myself it was fine. We were just walking a little further than we meant to. No big deal. But then something shifted. The trees closed in on us. The air felt heavier, and for the first time I couldn't hear the usual sounds of the village. It was like we were walking into a void, a place where we didn't belong. That's when I thought, maybe it's just me. Maybe Max was just being dramatic. Maybe it wasn't as bad as he thought. But then he said it again, his voice more urgent now, and everything in me froze. I felt my stomach drop, like it had suddenly turned to stone. The weight of his words hit me like a brick. He wasn't wrong. Something was off, and I had been too oblivious to notice it. By the time I fully grasped what was happening, it was almost too late. The men were too close now. They weren't walking beside us anymore. They were almost on us. Their eyes never left us, and I could feel the weight of their gaze like a heavy hand pressing on my chest. My mind scrambled, but I couldn't think clearly. I didn't know what to do. Max didn't hesitate. I heard him take off before I could even move, and I stupidly stood there for a second, trying to process it, frozen. He was already ahead, running like his life depended on it, and I knew then it was already too late for hesitation. I can't remember exactly when it happened, when the panic kicked in. 1 second, I was standing there, frozen, trying to make sense of Max's warning, and the next second, I was running. Max yanked my arm, pulling me forward, and I didn't even think about it. I just followed. My feet didn't feel like they were mine anymore. and it was like my body was moving on its own, dragged by pure instinct. The forest blurred around me as we sprinted through it, dodging branches and stumbling over roots. But my eyes couldn't focus on anything except the one thing I knew: I had to keep running. It was like I wasn't in control of my own body. My heart was pounding so loudly I couldn't hear anything else. My legs felt like they were made of lead, burning with each step, but there was no stopping. We ran like we were being chased by something far worse than just the two men behind us. Their voices, distant at first, started growing louder, closer. Every time I dared to glance behind us, I saw nothing but the thick trees, the dark shadows, and the sinking feeling in my chest that they were gaining on us. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't even think. All I could do was keep running, keep following Max's grip, which was now like a lifeline in the chaos. Max's hand in mine was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. He pulled me along, never letting go, never looking back. His panic was contagious, and somewhere deep down I knew he was terrified, but he was pushing through it. I had to keep up. We ran for what felt like hours, the path becoming less clear, the forest more oppressive. There was no end, no sign of safety, just the endless stretch of trees and the pounding of our feet against the earth. I don't know how I kept going. My breath was ragged, my chest burning with each inhale, but I didn't stop. There was no way to stop. If I did, I knew we were done. And somewhere, deep in my gut, I knew those men were still out there, still following. The terror kept me running, even when I thought my legs might give out. It felt like we were running forever, with no escape in sight. And yet, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop until we were far, far away from that forest, and from them. When we finally stumbled back into the village, I barely recognized the place. It looked the same, sure, but it didn't feel like home anymore. The familiar dirt roads, the old stone houses, it all seemed so distant, as though we had returned to a place that no longer existed for us. It was just a stop, a pit stop, on a journey that had already spiraled out of control. The world I once knew, where nothing bad ever happened, was now something I couldn't trust. Miss Hilda was the first to see us. She came running out from her house with that same warm, grandmotherly smile that always seemed to hide behind it some kind of strange, unsettling energy. She brought us inside, but I couldn't shake the terror crawling under my skin. The taste of fear was still in my mouth, the sweat still clinging to my skin. She gave us chocolate, tried to calm us down, but the sweetness of it couldn't mask the heaviness in my chest. Max, thankfully, was the one who spoke. He was the one who could tell the story without his voice breaking, without his hands shaking. He told Miss Hilda everything: how the men had found us, how they led us away, how their behavior shifted the further we went from the village, how we ran for our lives. I remember just sitting there, my mind still racing, trying to make sense of it all. I wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. My mind kept looping, stuck on a constant question I couldn't stop asking myself. Why did I go along with it? Why didn't I listen to Max when he first warned me? Why had I trusted those men, those strangers, without a second thought? It was like my instincts had been turned off completely. And what's worse, I couldn't stop blaming myself. I kept thinking that if I had been more aware, if I had paid attention to the red flags, maybe we wouldn't have been in that situation at all. And then, those men, they were never seen again. Not by anyone in the village. Not by Max. Not by me. They just disappeared. No one ever mentioned them. No one even asked who they were, what they wanted. The village continued on like nothing had happened, but I couldn't let it go. I'll never know who they were. What did they want with us? And why did they choose that day, that moment, to show up? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing, something we didn't understand. The whole thing felt like a warning that I couldn't place, and maybe that's the scariest part of it all. Not knowing. Looking back, I still can't figure out why my parents chose her. I mean, sure, Emma was young, maybe in her early 20s, but she had that kind of energy that made you think she was the perfect fit. She was polite, cheerful, always quick to smile, nothing like the usual sitters we had, who'd often show up late and act like they were just there for the paycheck. Emma, though, she had this aura of perfection, and maybe that's what made me uneasy. At first, I didn't think much of it. She'd come over in the afternoons, take us on little adventures, even helped with homework. My older brother Jake seemed to warm up to her almost immediately. He loved how easy it was to talk to her, how she didn't mind playing games or watching our shows with us. I didn't want to admit it then, but something felt off. It wasn't her, not directly, but something about her was always too polished. I guess it was the way she never seemed to have a bad day, like she was always on. Never tired, never moody. She made everything feel effortless. You know that feeling when something's just too good to be true? I couldn't put my finger on it, but it lingered. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me strangely, like when she thought I wasn't paying attention. It wasn't threatening, not exactly, just something in the way she looked at me, like she was trying to read my mind or figure something out. But it didn't feel friendly. It felt like she was always sizing me up, testing me, as if I was part of some game. Maybe I should have told someone back then, but I was just a kid. And honestly, it wasn't until later that I realized how wrong it all was. How could I have known? At the time, I guess I just felt safe because she made everything feel normal. But now, when I think back on it, I can't shake the feeling that there was more to her than I ever realized, and that's what haunts me the most. I still don't know how we survived that drive. I mean, the whole thing felt like it went on forever. Me and my brother Luke in the back seat, just bickering to pass the time while I tried not to let the nausea take over. My stomach was doing flips, and the only thing that kept me from throwing up was trying to focus on the scenery outside the window. But that didn't help much either. It was endless roads, fields, and trees, the kind of view you'd only expect in a movie, with nothing but the horizon for miles and miles. At some point, it all started blending together, and the feeling of time stretching on forever really hit me. Finally, we pulled up to my grandparents' farm, and I swear, the second we stepped out of the car, everything changed. The air, it was so different. It smelled fresh, almost too clean, and there was this odd quietness about the place. You could hear the wind rustling the trees, the occasional crow in the distance, but it was almost too quiet. There were no car engines or the sounds of the city. It felt like we'd stepped into another world. I should have felt better, right? After the long drive, this was supposed to be our break, a peaceful escape from the usual chaos. But there was something about the house that I couldn't shake. Grandpa and Grandma greeted us like they always did, all smiles and open arms, and for a minute it felt like I was going to finally relax. But as I stood there, looking around, I realized how big everything was. The house was quaint, sure, but the space around it, huge. The fields, the woods, it all seemed endless. It made me feel small, like I didn't belong there. Maybe I was just tired, or maybe it was the silence getting to me. But it felt like there was something off, something in the air. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I could tell Luke felt it too. The feeling didn't go away though, and I hated that. It was like being on the edge of something I couldn't see, but I knew was there. Maybe that's the problem. It never left. I still can't wrap my head around what happened that day. Was it my mind playing tricks on me? I tried convincing myself it was, but deep down I know what I saw. It's hard to shake that image, even now. It happened when we were out feeding the animals, me, Grandpa, and Luke. Everything was peaceful at first. The dog Cora was wagging her tail and Luke was busy leading the goats to their pen. I was more interested in the woods behind the barn though. The trees stretched on forever and the air felt colder the closer I looked. I should have been paying attention to Cora, but I couldn't help it. I kept staring into the woods. That's when I saw him. He was standing there, just barely hidden behind a tree. At first, I thought it was one of the farm hands, maybe checking on something, but the figure didn't move. It didn't look right. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just some random person. He was too still, too waiting. And the worst part, I felt it, that terrible feeling like someone was watching me. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a deer or some animal blending into the shadows, but it didn't feel like that. It wasn't an animal. It was human though, the way he was half hidden behind that tree, it almost felt like he wanted to be invisible. Grandpa didn't seem to notice, and Luke was too busy with the animals to care. I didn't want to make a scene, but I also couldn't shake that image. I felt like I was being watched, and that feeling didn't fade, not even when we went back inside for the day. I kept thinking about that man, or whatever he was. Why hadn't anyone else seen him? Was it just me, or was it something more? I couldn't shake it, even though Grandpa just brushed it off like it was nothing. It gnawed at me the whole day, and even now, I'm not sure what to think. What did I see? Was it real? Was I imagining it? It still bugs me. To this day, I don't know why I can't shake it off. We were just at the local store grabbing some things Grandpa needed for the house, and everything seemed perfectly normal at first. Luke was messing around in the aisles, tossing canned goods into the cart like a kid who had nothing better to do. Grandpa was busy picking up supplies, and I was just walking around, not really paying attention. But then, I saw him. He was standing at the end of one of the aisles, just watching me. At first I thought it was just some guy who happened to look my way, but no, it wasn't that kind of glance. This was different. It was like he knew exactly who I was. I remember his eyes were focused on me, and it wasn't a casual glance. It felt too deliberate. He just stood there like he was waiting for something, like he had something to say. I tried to ignore him, focusing on the shelves in front of me, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I felt watched, and it didn't sit right with me. When Grandpa wasn't looking, the guy actually spoke up. He asked where we were staying. He asked where we were from, and then the weirdest thing, he asked about the farm, as if he knew about it, as if he'd been there before, or at least knew something about it. It threw me off so much. Who was this guy? Why was he asking me these questions? I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he was just making small talk, but there was something off about it. The questions didn't feel innocent. They felt invasive, like he already knew too much about us, like he was trying to get information. I wanted to say something, anything, but I couldn't get the words out. When I looked back after a few seconds, he was still watching us, just standing there, as if he was waiting for me to say something, or for something to happen. I felt exposed, like everything about me was on display. Why did he act like that? Why did it feel so wrong? It didn't make sense. He didn't look dangerous. Not in the way you expect someone threatening to look, but there was something off about him, something that didn't fit. Maybe that was the point. He wasn't supposed to make sense. Maybe that's exactly what made him so unsettling. Even now, when I think back on that night, I can't quite make sense of what happened. It's like my brain wants to forget, but the memory keeps coming back, always in bits and pieces that don't add up. It started with the humming, soft at first, like a distant noise I couldn't quite place, almost like something I had heard in my sleep. I remember it clearly, the theme song from Cyberchase playing in the background of my mind, and for a second I thought it was just part of some weird dream. But as I blinked awake, I realized I wasn't asleep. It was real. The sound was coming from outside the window. I remember the stillness of the room, everything so quiet except for that humming. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was Grandpa. He liked to stay up late, sometimes watching TV in the living room. Maybe he had heard the show playing and started humming along, thinking I wouldn't hear. But then I called out. It was a simple, innocent thing, just calling out to see if it was him. But as soon as I did, the humming stopped. I thought, maybe it was just a coincidence, so I called out again. That's when the voice came. It didn't sound like Grandpa at all. It wasn't even close. The voice was flat, emotionless, almost rehearsed, like someone was trying too hard to sound normal. It called me out into the night, saying there was something cool to see outside. I don't know why I didn't trust it. I mean, it was Grandpa, right? But something in my gut was telling me not to go. Something didn't feel right. I was tired, so tired. My brain wasn't working straight, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just an innocent late-night chat. But still, I put on my shoes. I couldn't help myself. I was a kid, and I wanted to believe it was okay, that nothing could go wrong. But even as I opened the window, I felt that gnawing sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust the voice, but it was too late to turn back. I went outside anyway. I don't even know how I didn't catch it sooner, how I didn't feel the wrongness of it all from the start. But I guess when you're a kid, your mind does strange things to protect you, and it doesn't always tell you the truth when you need it most. When I grabbed that hand, it felt wrong, like everything in my body was screaming that something wasn't right. His hand was smoother, softer, and I should have known. Grandpa's hands were always rough from years of hard work. His skin was weathered, his fingers calloused from handling tools and ropes. But this hand, it felt like it belonged to someone younger, someone who didn't have the weight of decades on their palms. My heart started racing in that instant, the kind of racing that makes your chest ache, that makes you feel like you can't breathe. I kept telling myself, it's just my imagination, it's fine, it's Grandpa, it's okay. But the voice in my head wasn't buying it. Why was Grandpa out here at this hour? Why was he wearing that hoodie, pulling it up like he didn't want me to see his face? I kept thinking, maybe it's nothing. Maybe I was just too tired. But the more I thought about it, the more my mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. The air felt thicker, heavier with every step we took toward the barn. I don't even know why I didn't stop myself sooner. Maybe it was the adrenaline, the confusion, or the part of me that wanted to trust it was Grandpa, that it had to be. But then I saw it. The long handle of something. Was it a knife, sticking out from the waistband of his hoodie? That's when it clicked. That's when the terror hit me like a brick wall. I tried to pull away, but his grip was way too strong, uncomfortably strong, and I swear my hand was shaking so badly I thought he could feel it. And then, thank God, I heard Grandpa's voice from inside the house. It was like a lifeline thrown to me. The man, whoever he was, turned his head for just a second, long enough for me to break free from his grip. I ran without thinking, just bolting away, and all I could hear was my heart pounding in my ears. Looking back, I can't decide what scared me more, the man himself, or the fact that I didn't even realize it wasn't Grandpa until the last moment. I don't know how I didn't see it earlier. I don't know how I could have been so naive. But that moment, that realization is still burned into my mind. I still hear that voice, that hand, that feeling of wrongness every time I close my eyes. When the cops finally showed up, it was like a weight had been lifted. But at the same time, I've never felt more terrified. Everything after that was a blur, a rush of flashing lights, my Grandpa and Grandma standing there, their faces as confused and shaken as mine. But even then, a part of me still couldn't believe what had just happened. It didn't feel real. The police had found him. They'd found Greg. And when I heard his name, my stomach dropped. Greg, Emma's ex-boyfriend, had been hiding out on our property the whole time, waiting, watching, planning. The truth was more horrifying than I could have ever imagined. The whole time I thought it was just some weird feeling, some instinct telling me something wasn't right, but I never could have guessed it was him, waiting in the shadows. He had been stalking us all along, all of us. The cops said he'd been living off the land, hiding in the woods, watching, listening. He said he wasn't going to hurt me, that he just wanted to talk to Emma. But how could I believe that? The guy had an axe. An axe. He was hiding it in his waistband, like it was just some ordinary tool. But it was anything but. And then it hit me. His plan. He admitted it. He'd been planning to take me so he could force Emma to come back to him. He'd been obsessing over her for months, trying to find a way to control her, to make her feel trapped enough to come back. He said he was going to take me and hold me until she had no choice but to return to him. That's when everything made sense. That's when I realized just how deep this went, how messed up and dangerous it all was. But even with all the pieces in place, I couldn't shake the what-ifs. What would have happened if I had gone outside when he called me? If I had followed him like I almost did? I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe he was right. Maybe he wouldn't have hurt me, at least not right away. But how was I supposed to know that? How could I trust him? I'm just thankful Grandpa woke up that night. If he hadn't, I don't know how far it would have gone. What if Grandpa hadn't heard me? What if he hadn't called out? Would I have been gone by morning? I guess I'll never know. It's strange though. Even now I feel a part of me trying to make sense of it all. I don't understand how I didn't notice earlier, how I could have let myself be led into that situation. But maybe that's how these things happen, right? They don't feel real until they're right in front of you. And by then it's too late to change anything. You know, it's funny how life can back you into a corner you never thought you'd be in. After the divorce, I didn't have much of a plan. Scratch that, I didn't have any plan. Just a handful of boxes, a half-dead phone, and this gnawing feeling that I had no real place to go. I wasn't gonna crash on a buddy's couch like some college kid, and my pride wouldn't let me move back in with my parents, not if I could help it. That's how I ended up at my grandfather's old place, this rundown house just outside of Chatham, Alabama. About 10 minutes from town if you speed, and 10 acres of woods wrapping it up like a secret nobody really cared about anymore. It was one of those old wooden houses that felt heavy, like the kind of heavy that soaks into the walls. Cold, too. I don't care what the thermostat said, the chill never really left. You'd walk across the living room, and the floors would creak loud enough. You'd swear someone was following you, but it was free. That mattered, and honestly, at that point, I told myself I could get used to anything. I figured a little peace and quiet might even do me good. Start fresh. The first few days were what you'd expect. Dust everywhere, dead spiders in the corners, cabinets that hadn't been touched in God knows how long. I spent most evenings sitting out on the front porch, sipping cheap beer and watching the sunset bleed into the trees. It was quiet out there, eerily quiet sometimes, but after everything, I thought maybe that's what I needed. A place where the world wouldn't bother me, or at least, that's what I thought at first. Those first few nights, I'll be real with you, they were almost nice. Peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I'd sit out on the porch with a beer, sometimes two, just listening to the night settle in around me. The way the trees would sway and creak, how an owl would call out now and then. It was like the world out there was some living thing breathing slow and steady. And for a while I could almost trick myself into feeling at ease. But then, right around the end of that first week, something shifted. It started with the whistling. The first time I heard it, it was just after 1 in the morning. I remember checking the time because I figured it had to be some neighbor stumbling home drunk or something. The tune, or whatever it was supposed to be, was broken, off key. Not a song I could place, just a slow, dragging whistle like someone walking through the woods and half forgetting the melody as they went. At first I told myself it was nothing. Maybe somebody hunting late. Maybe some weirdo wandering around. Rural places have their fair share of oddballs after all. I clung to that explanation harder than I probably should have, because deep down something about it didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just the whistling itself, it was the way it seemed, directed. Like it wasn't just drifting through the woods randomly, like it was coming toward me. Still, I brushed it off, sat a little closer to the door after that, pretended not to listen too hard when it started up again the next night. Told myself a lot of things I didn't really believe, told myself a lot of things I needed to believe. After a few more nights of that whistling, I'll admit it, I started cracking a little. I wasn't sleeping right. Every little sound had me sitting bolt upright in bed, heart hammering in my chest like a kid scared of the dark. Eventually, I got desperate enough to call the sheriff's office. And that's when Deputy Hev showed up. Older guy, the kind who looked like he'd seen too much and stopped caring somewhere along the way. I expected him to roll his eyes, maybe tell me it was a coyote or some prankster. I wasn't ready for what he actually said. Turns out, my grandfather had called them about the same thing. That threw me harder than I care to admit. I mean, I'd grown up thinking of my granddad as this tough, no-nonsense kind of guy. I never once heard him complain about anything spooky or weird. And yet, here I was living the exact same nightmare he apparently went through. After Deputy Heft left, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, something I wasn't being told. So I ended up in the attic, digging through boxes that smelled like dust and mildew, half hoping to find some simple explanation tucked away in a letter or an old photo. What I found instead were his journals. He'd written about it, meticulously. Not just once or twice, but for years. Always in the spring. Always after my grandmother passed, when he was living alone. Page after page of the same thing, hearing the whistling, feeling watched, not knowing who or what was out there. Finding those journals should have made me feel less crazy. It didn't, it just made everything heavier. Like whatever this was, it wasn't just a fluke. It had roots, deep ones. After finding those journals, it was like whatever was out there decided it didn't need to keep its distance anymore. Like I'd opened some door I didn't even realize was there. The whistling didn't stay in the woods after that. It started moving closer. First, it was under the floorboards. I remember sitting on the couch, lights off, shotgun across my lap when I heard it muffled and warbling coming from directly beneath me, like someone crawling around in the crawl space, piping out that same broken tune up through the vents. I just sat there, frozen, feeling the floor vibrate slightly under my feet. Another night, it was by the front porch. I heard it as clear as anything, like whoever it was standing right on the other side of the door, whistling just to let me know they were there. I put my back to the wall and waited it out, praying they'd leave. The worst part was how it kept changing, kept getting bolder. I started locking everything down like I was prepping for a siege. Doors, windows, even pushing chairs up under the doorknobs like that would somehow make a difference. But no matter what I did, it never felt like enough. Every night I sat there gripping that old shotgun so tight my hands would ache by morning. I didn't even really know how to use it right. I'd check the shells, load and reload, whispering to myself that I could handle it if it came to that. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a part of me kept whispering another thought: maybe I was losing it, maybe none of it was real. I didn't know which thought scared me more, that someone was really out there, or that maybe I was already too far gone to tell the difference. The night I actually saw someone, even now, part of me wonders if my brain just made it up, if stress and sleeplessness finally pushed me over. But I can still see it when I close my eyes, clear as anything. It started with knocking, not banging, not frantic, just 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the back door. I laid there frozen, holding my breath, like if I stayed still enough, whoever it was would go away. Then I heard footsteps, heavy ones, moving through the kitchen into the hallway. The hallway light flickered once and then just gave out, plunging everything into darkness. I sat up, shotgun shaking in my hands, and looked down the hallway. That's when I saw them. A figure, standing there like they'd been waiting for me to notice. Pale face catching just enough of the outside light to be visible. Clothes so black they looked like they were eating up the dark around them. They didn't move, neither did I. For a few seconds or minutes, maybe longer, we just stood there. I remember thinking if I blinked, they'd vanish. Like none of this would have ever happened. Like I could just wake up in my bed and laugh it off. But then they moved. A quick, jerky twist, like they were about to bolt. And without thinking, without aiming, I fired, straight into the darkness where they had been standing. The sound of the shot felt like it shattered the whole house. My ears rang so hard I couldn't hear anything else. I didn't even wait. I grabbed my keys and tore out of there. Didn't even lock the door behind me. I didn't care anymore. I just needed to get away, even if only for a few hours. Even now I wonder, was it even real? Was any of it? The next morning, Deputy A came back to the house with me. I was still half in shock, hardly able to breathe after what had happened the night before. But when we got to the door, my stomach sank. It was unlocked. Not just ajar or broken, but completely unlocked, like someone had deliberately opened it. Deputy AK stepped inside, eyes scanning, then turned to me. No words, just that look. I could see him trying to process it, like he was hoping there'd be some kind of explanation, maybe a window left open or something that made sense. But there wasn't. Nothing was missing. No windows were broken, no signs of a break-in, just unlocked. I didn't need him to say it out loud, but it hit me like a freight train. Whoever had been coming around, they hadn't just started when I moved in. They'd been there before I even showed up, maybe even when my grandfather was still alive. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but now it was impossible not to. It made sense, in a way. The way the whistling had always been tied to spring. The way my grandfather's journals described the same patterns, the same eerie presence, year after year. I changed the locks that afternoon. The whole time, part of me knew it wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't stop whoever had a key. It wouldn't change the fact that they were out there, watching, waiting. So, I packed up, threw a few things in my truck, didn't even bother with much. I left the house that same day, drove straight to my parents' place like my life depended on it. I didn't even stop to look back. Part of me still wonders if I made the right choice, or if running just made me the next target. Before I left for good, I spent a few frantic hours trying to clear out anything that mattered. The house felt empty now, more than just the physical space, but like the air was thinner, like everything that had ever been in it was about to disappear too. I wasn't thinking clearly, wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but something kept pushing me to look harder, deeper, as if I might find some answer that would make sense of all this. And then I did. It was almost by accident. I was standing near the kitchen, just about to head up to the attic to grab a box of stuff I'd missed, when I noticed something odd by the vent. At first, I thought it was dust or a piece of insulation hanging out of the grate, but it wasn't. It was a tiny lens. My stomach twisted, and everything slowed down. I pulled at the vent cover, my hands shaking as I pried it open, and there it was, an old, cheap camera. Not the kind you'd find in a store, but something homemade, almost like a surveillance camera someone had set up years ago. I didn't stop there. I checked the rest of the house, vent after vent, corner after corner, and I found more of them, hidden in the trees outside, perched in windows, tucked in corners of rooms I had never thought to look. Old, outdated cameras. Some were covered in dust, others looked almost new. They'd been there for years, maybe longer. I still don't know who put them there. I don't know if it was one person, or if it was more than one. Maybe my grandfather had known about them. Maybe he hadn't. The thought of him possibly knowing, of him maybe being just as trapped as I was, makes my skin crawl. All I know is someone had been watching that house for a long, long time, and if I hadn't left when I did, I can't shake the feeling that they wouldn't have just stayed in the shadows. They might have come a lot closer.